Our first email this week is from Terence, who's from the internet. Hi guys, it's Terence again. I feel like all my questions are centered around the NX, so let's keep the train going. There's been some rumors that the NX will be this hybrid console that many, including you guys, have predicted. Now, I am personally all for new concepts in consoles. Initially loved the idea of the gamepad, and I think this handheld console thing will be interesting to say the least. However, I'm also afraid that the NX will negatively affect the two things Nintendo does better than anyone else. First, Nintendo is king of the handheld and have done an incredible job creating exclusivity with the DS and 3DS. I, for one, can't imagine Fire Emblem or Pokemon as TV games, and how they combine their console and handheld operations could be great or a disaster. Second, Nintendo releases the most cost-effective console consistently. As a two-in-one console, will the price that gets money for Nintendo be good for their consumers, or are we looking at a $400 or more console? Thank you for reading my question.
I think price is an interesting way to kick this off because I don't think we've talked a huge amount about it, and I think it is actually one of the more crucial aspects when talking about a new product in the market. Obviously, the people who are big fans are going to buy it regardless, right? Me and you,
yeah.
If they charge $1,000, I don't know, maybe I'd have to rethink.
Yeah.
But, granted, in a good amount of money.
Yeah, we're comfortable $400 to $600 potentially. We're crazy.
Sure. Right. Yeah. I mean, we do a podcast about it, so it would be a bit weird if we didn't, right? But when you're thinking about the average consumer and the people who are just going into a store and seeing a product and thinking, do I get there or do I not? It has to be at a price which is kind of spur of the moment, like a impulse buy, as it were. It has to be a thing that people can think about and think, okay, maybe this is something that I want and it seems like a good price. I just got paid. This sounds good. Let's do it, right? And I think the thing that really killed Microsoft at the start of this generation, not as much the whole fuck up with the DRM and the whole, like, their policies, but their price point of $500 versus PlayStation's of $400, I think for the mass market of people who don't actually pay attention to what's going on behind the scenes and all the fuck-ups that Microsoft did, that killed them way faster than anything that they said on stage, was the fact that they were $100 more. So we cannot, overlook this as a factor. It is very important. And it's maybe concerning because all the rumors we hear about NX is that it is a high-quality product, from the rumors of a 720p screen to the idea that it's going to have capacitive touch now as opposed to resistive, which is what Wii U and 3DS use, to this whole idea of having it on a docking station. It seems like it has to run Zelda Breath of the Wild as well, right? So it needs to be a solid piece of kit. Can they bring it in at a price point that is not only relevant to the market, but one that people can bite at? And that's the problem I'm finding myself struggling with in terms of what is NX, right?
And of course, it's in this unique position where we don't, by the fact that it's handheld and home console, or so the rumors suggest, we don't know how they can bundle it. Will there be a cheaper version you can buy that's solely handheld, but at the same time, will there be a more expensive bundle that might come with a bigger hard drive, but also come with the docking station that links to your TV? Who knows? I think that what's interesting is that you can't imagine the docking station for the TV really doing very much. I mean, obviously it might plug into your wall, but surely it'll just have one cable that plugs into the wall and one cable that plugs into your TV, and essentially it's just a dock. And I can't imagine it having a high amount of technology in it that would up the price a tremendous amount. So who knows if they maybe even would they risk just selling one bundle that includes that anyway because it might be cheaper, or are they trying to aim at a solely handheld market as well and have maybe a cheaper option? It's going to be really, really interesting to see how many bundles they do and the pricing structure of those bundles.
I think at a bare minimum, they have to have at least two bundles. And the reason I say that is the NX is, from all we've heard, the device which bridges the gap between the Western market and the Japanese market, in the sense that here, more people buy consoles and play on consoles. In Japan, more people buy handhelds and play on handhelds. So this device doing both necessitates, I think, a split in the approach that you put it out on the market, where for Japan, I think the SKU that's going to sell the best is going to be just the device on its own. They're not going to be worried about having it on their big screen at home. It'll be cheaper, obviously, but that's what they want. Whereas in North America and potentially in Europe, it has to be marketed more from the perspective of a home console, I think. It can be marketed from a handheld perspective as well, but I think they need to offer both to the markets in the West, as opposed to, like, if they didn't release the base station in Japan, I wouldn't be surprised. Like they probably will, because they have to, and it makes sense. But the idea of having, it's not only just having different SKUs for the market to kind of decide on, it's also the notion that potentially you can sell more units of the cheaper version because it's comparative to the more expensive. And this is a point I think a lot of people have been bringing up with the PlayStation Pro versus the PlayStation Slim. And the thing that is smart about that device, despite everyone shitting on the Pro, is that the Pro makes the Slim look cheap by comparison, right?
Yeah.
So when people walk into the store and see two versions, they are much more likely, if they're just a casual consumer, to say the cheaper one, because that's all I really need for my usage. So having a handheld without a base station and a bundle with it put in there allows the consumer who doesn't necessarily know what's going on to say, this is the cheaper option, I'm going to buy this because it seems like a good value proposition, right?
Definitely.
And I think that's a way they can get more people in the door.
I think that by the fact that the docking station might not have much technology in it, that they can really go for it with the high end model. I think they can reduce the size of the hard drive and everything on the cheaper model, and obviously keep it handheld. But I reckon with the pricier model, they could add in all the attachments that might be suited for gaming at home. They can increase the size of the hard drive. They can add in things that you're paying for that make it a proper, premium product that I'm paying all of this for. And I can imagine that going between $350 to $400. And I think that would be a sensible price for something that high end. And then it'd be interesting to see how cheap they can get the cheaper version, because I'd worry that they'd struggle to get it cheaper than, say, I don't know, $300. I think that's a big concern, is that they're in danger of both of them being quite high end. But based on what you've said, MBZ, because it sounds like a really high quality product, and that's exciting obviously for you and me, but it's quite worrying in terms of pricing structure and how well this thing's going to sell.
Yeah, maybe if we look at it from the perspective of the handheld market, you say the 3DS came in at $250, right? And obviously that was way overpriced because they had to cut it 3 months after the system came out to $180. And you say maybe this is obviously way more powerful than the 3DS. The technology's obviously moved on, so prices come down over time, but I think they could go in with $250 as a starting price for just the handheld on its own. Yeah. And think they could probably get away with that. It depends on, obviously there are a ton of factors regarding a console launch and all that stuff, but I think that they can definitely get people interested by putting it there. And I think the Wii came in at $250 in North America. It might have been less than that. I believe it was $200 or $250. And that obviously spoke to that more casual market and did gangbusters. So it really seems like they have to be smart about it. They have to have the right marketing strategy, and they definitely need to talk about it in ways that don't confuse people like they did before. So it's going to be interesting to watch, for sure. Is
price and bundles something that happens in the reveal?
Yeah, I think so. I think they definitely put down some details. It's so close to launch that it kind of... I can't remember if Microsoft gave price at their Xbox reveal. I think they didn't. I believe that was E3. But even then, that was 5 months out from the release of the Xbox One. I think Sony did the same thing. Sony's reveal of the PS4 in early February of that year didn't actually give any date or price. So I can see it being the first reveal, them not necessarily doing that, and maybe a January event perhaps to give a direct that gives details. I don't know. Maybe going by the model of the other companies, they never do that anyway. They march the beat of their own drum. But yeah, I'm interested. Maybe. I'm not as confident as I think in that, to be honest.
And then on to the second part of Terrence's question, where he talks about unique experiences that Nintendo designed for handhelds. So he brings up Fire Emblem and Pokemon. Obviously, Fire Emblem has been on a TV with both GameCube and Wii
absolutely.
games. Pokemon less so. It has had sort of stadium-esque games, but not the sort of core Pokemon franchise has never been on a TV screen. So,
I mean, Colosseum and stuff, but sure.
Come on, they're not core. They're not generation, but totally.
I mean, I get where he's coming from. I don't know. I think this is the thing that we talked about before with what do they do with 2D top-down Zelda when you can play Breath of the Wild on a train? Does it die a death that is, you can't come back from? Which potentially, yeah, but also we've seen how Nintendo revived things like 2D Mario over the years and Donkey Kong Country, obviously, and they had this whole renaissance of 2D games. So I'm not sure that it's necessarily going to be that big of a problem. It just may mean, I don't know, hibernation for some of these properties. Obviously, Pokemon isn't going to do that, but I really don't think they're going to put in that much effort to make it that different an experience. I think that they're just going to march to the beat of, hey, this is Pokemon and this is what we've always done, and now it's on a big screen. If you want to do that, you can do that, but it's still built for handheld front and foremost.
I'm convinced that stuff like top-down Zelda, Link Between Worlds, I think games like that will continue to come out for the very simple reason that if Nintendo only ever make Zelda games of the scale and scope of Breath of the Wild, then we're going to get even fewer and fewer Zelda games, because ultimately
that's true.
These handheld experiences, by and large, are faster and cheaper to develop and come out. So I think this is the big advantage, is that Nintendo can align its strategy all onto one system where you're getting a combination of handheld experiences, whether that is even 2D Mario you could add in, or who knows, 2D Metroid, who knows. But these games, it's much easier to make a 2D Metroid than Metroid Prime 4. You can't just keep churning out Metroid Prime 4, Breath of the Wild, full 3D Mario games, the Mario Galaxy 3. These are huge Nintendo's version of AAA games that you can't just ignore the smaller scale, shorter but still incredible games like Link Between Worlds. So I think that
it also kind of lends to their strategy of, hey, we want to keep putting out products with this franchise on it to stem the gap between the big releases, right? So it would make sense from that end. If it's not just a spin-off but having these other versions, that also will work. So maybe it's not going to be as big a deal as we think it is. Maybe they're just going to continue doing what they've been doing and just put out those games regardless. So
I think it'll be fascinating.
We'll see.
It will be fascinating.
Yeah, it will. It'll be very interesting. If you enjoyed this discussion and would like to hear more, consider subscribing to us on YouTube and following the podcast playlist. You can also find us on iTunes and various other places. Follow us on Twitter @TNL Podcast and email us thisnintendolife@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.